So our storytellers today, Clay Hurtubise, Amy Hutchisson, Liz Rogers, John Duncan, Mike Vax, and Lee Reeves. So are you ready to hear your first story? Yes. All right, excellent. Well, our first story is somebody that many of you may know in town, who is, I would call him a fixture in Prescott. Certainly one of our most well-known individuals, and certainly he's known internationally. And I won't say anything else, but please give a warm Stories That Matter welcome for Mike Vax.
Well, for those of you that know me a little bit, you'll know that it has to have something to do with music. And I'll preface it by saying, for those of you that aren't true big band fans, you may not know the name Stan Kenton, but he was one of the biggest bands of the whole big band era from the 40s, and his band actually lasted until 1978. It was one of the few big bands that stayed on the road all of those years. Well, when I was in high school, I was planning on being a classical symphonic trumpet player. And there was a very famous trumpet player that came to our high school to do a workshop. His name was Don Jacoby. And he heard me play, and he found out that I was a Stan Kenton fan. And he said, "Kid, you have to go to the summer camp this summer." It was at Indiana University. It was only the second year of the Kenton camps. It was 1960. And I was 17. I was just graduating from high school. And I didn't know anything about it, so he had them send me all this information. And I finally called him and I said, "Mr. Jacoby, we just don't have the money. I can't afford to get all the way to Indiana and go to this wonderful camp, and so I'm going to have to, turn it down." And Don Jacoby was a real curmudgeon. And over the phone, he sort of yelled at me and he said, "Just get there, kid." So my uncle bought me a train ticket from Oakland to Indiana. And I got back there. I was one of the younger ones. Most of the people were college age that were going to those early clinics. And I got put in on lead trumpet in about the third band out of 12 bands. But Connie Condoli and Jimmy Maxwell, who were two very famous trumpet players, were the teachers. And I don't even remember my audition. I was so scared. I just remember walking in, and Connie said, "Oh, you're Jake's kid," because Don Jacoby had called him. And so I made my student band. I made a band that did a lot of improvisational stuff. And it turned out that the Kenton band needed a fourth trumpet player. So they put me on the Kenton band. So I got to play Understand when I was 17 years old. Changed my life because, as I say, actually it almost ruined my life because, you see, if I'd have gotten a job with an orchestra, I would have had a steady job all these years as a jazz player. But seriously, it changed my whole way of thinking going to that camp. And at the end of that 2 weeks, I went up to Stan, and I was even shorter then than I am now, and he was 6'4", and I look up at him and I say, "Mr. Kenton, I'm going to play on your band someday." And he was great with kids. So his answer was, "Well, if you want to bad enough, you probably will." I was 17. You know what I heard? Stan Kenton said I could play on his band. So after 5 years in college and 4 years in the Navy show band, I had the first trumpet player before me on the Kenton band heard me play in San Francisco, and so they had me come to L.A. for an audition. And this was April of 1970. So I go down for an audition, and they say, "You did really good, but we have other people to audition." And I'm thinking, "Yeah, don't call us, we'll call you." But at least I got a chance. So about a week later, I get a call from Dick Shearer, the road manager, and he says, "Well, we'd like you to join the band, and we leave May 2nd on tour." Remember, this is April of 1970. And my heart sank, and I said, but I don't get out of the Navy till the fall. And I hear him talking to Stan Kenton. Stan gets on the phone and says, we'd really like to have you on the band. Let me make a few phone calls. To this day, I don't know who he called. At that point, he might have called President Nixon. He knew everybody. I was out of the Navy May 1st, and I joined the band May 2nd. And I guess the kicker to that story is because I became so involved with all of the Kenton stuff that I have now been leading the Stan Kenton Legacy Orchestra for the past 32 years, and it's one of the last touring big bands. In fact, we'll be touring in next April. We played here at the Elks. We played, I forget how many years ago it was, but we played downstairs. So anyway, you know, it's like stories that schooled you and changed your life. Had I not gone to that clinic in 1960, I'd have had a steady job as a classical player.
Mike Vax. If you don't know Mike Vax, then you're not hanging around the jazz scene in this town, that's for damn sure. He's been on the road for what, 50 years?
Until COVID, it was 53 years.
53 years he's been on the road, nationally, internationally, globe hopping, playing music, holding seminars, teaching about music, and on and on and on. He's performed on over 80 albums with anybody and everybody that you can possibly think of in the jazz world, and has, 30 albums of your own? Yep. 30 albums of his own out there. Just amazing. He is the founder and chairman of the Board of Friends of Big Band Jazz, has donated tens of thousands to jazz camps, programs in schools, musicians in need. He's also the founder and director of the Prescott Jazz Summit, and which takes place every year on the Courthouse Square, and also the Jazz Journey series that happens in this room once a month. The next one is coming up October 19th, I believe.
Right, there's some flyers on the table.
Yeah, some flyers on the tables that'll, and this one is Halloween themed jazz.
And we have prizes for costumes.
Oh, costume show. Okay, well, there you go. When I asked Mike what his most annoying habit was, he said, playing the trumpet, actually. And a couple of interesting things about him. He was an Eagle Scout, believe it or not, and I never got it out of Cub Scouts. I think I got as far as, before they kicked me out. And was this in college? Yeah. Yes, this is in college. In college, he was an archery champ, and he could have tried out for the Olympics, but he was so busy with his music that he didn't have the time to split. So not too late. Not too late. There you go. So Mike Vax, everybody. Okay. Our next storyteller is homegrown. We were requested that to make a space, so we did. And our next storyteller is going to be Liz Rogers.
So my first scholastic memory was being told by the teacher that I was so smart and that I needed to skip a grade. So after 2 weeks in kindergarten, they put me in first grade. The rest of the class started in kindergarten together and moved up. So there I am, the new kid. I'm short, still, young, immature, and surrounded by those E names. Susie, Darcy, Casey, Jenny. Popular names for popular girls. I so wanted to be one of them. But I never quite got it. I was immature, lacked the social skills. Throughout grammar school, I lacked the social skills to join a club. I lacked the technical skills to join a team. I wasn't athletic enough to be a jock, and I wasn't good enough in school to be part of the nerd herd, because being smart and doing the homework, two totally different things. I just liked to read. I remember in 3rd grade, they put a roster of all the students up on the wall, and every time you finished a book, you would make a little tick mark. Well, I was adding a tick mark every day, except for Mondays. Then it was 3. You'd win pizza or ice cream, and I thought it was something to be proud of. Look at all that I read. Until my oh-so-kind classmates informed me the reason I was reading so much is because I had no friends and I had nothing else to do. They weren't wrong. Both of my parents worked, and my older brother and older sister didn't seem to have the social issues that I did. So I walked home by myself after school from the time I was a little kid. They called us latchkey kids at the time, and I remember the feel of that cold key bouncing on the chain as I would walk home as fast as I could, with my shoulders hunched and my head down. If I had a hood on, it was even better. Anything to avoid making eye contact with any of the neighborhood kids, because that would just give them another opportunity to tease and scare me. I would rush home, pick up whatever book I was reading, curl up in my favorite chair, and spend a couple of hours that way until somebody else got home. I hated when the phone would ring, because more often than not, it was a prank call telling me I had made the cheerleading squad, or about some boy who really liked me but was just too shy to tell me at school. For somebody being so smart, I fell for it every time. If somebody mentioned my weight, I wouldn't eat for 3 days. If they mentioned my clothes, I would beg my mother to take me shopping. And I would wait for one of those e-girls to go by, and then I would follow her around the mall, hiding behind the racks of clothing or the mannequins, so I could pick out exactly what they picked out. On them, it looked great. I never quite got it right. I'd pair it with the wrong shoes, or I didn't know how to accessorize or roll the sleeve just right, or most likely it just looked like I was trying too hard. Reporting the teasing to my teachers didn't do any good. I remember there was one time I wrote my teacher a letter, and I explained what everybody had been doing, and I listed the worst culprits. One of the popular boys took the letter from the teacher's desk and shared it with the rest of the clique. And instead of feeling ashamed or embarrassed about what they had done to me, they added extra names because everybody wanted to be part of the I Hate Liz club. When I finally got up the nerve to write the teacher again, she read it and she looks at me and says, "What do you want me to do about it, Liz?" I wanted her to fix it. Or fix me, probably. As we got older, it got worse. Middle school-aged kids are a little more creative in their cruelty. There was the PE class with the mandatory square dancing class, and none of the boys would touch my arms during the do-si-dos. I was to be avoided. If there was a team project, I was paired with whoever wasn't there. At the time now, I think we're more aware of what verbal teasing and abuse does to a person. But I was raised in the time of sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Bullshit. I also heard, ignore it, it'll stop. And my personal favorite, they only tease you because they like you. What a horrible message to give to children, that it's okay. By the time 8th grade ran around, I stopped trying to fit in and started trying to blend in with the walls. The less attention I got, the better. I stopped raising my hand in class. I stopped trying to join clubs. I actually remember the last time I raised my hand. It was math class, and the teacher, Mr. Steinbeck, was having students take turns answering problems on the chalkboard. I made the mistake of raising my hand to volunteer right after he said, "Who wants to do 69?" I didn't get it. I didn't understand why the whole class started laughing and making fun of me again, because I was just doing what everybody else was. But I never raised my hand again. I made friends with people who weren't kind to me, who treated me terribly, just so I wouldn't have to eat lunch by myself. By the time high school came around, I was ignored. I'd like to think that we matured, but I think the truth is everybody was just so invested in their own life and I wasn't on the radar. I was never invited to anything, no parties. I wasn't asked to join the student council. I wasn't asked to join the dance team. And I was okay with being ignored. Well, I told myself I was. Of course, it hurt my feelings when I would be skipped over, but I learned to hide that. It's a skill I still use very well to this day. But in high school, one of my electives was public speaking and debate. And it was about 3 or 4 classes in, and I realized I was good at something. I joined the competitive team, and within a couple of months, I was going to tournaments, and I was bringing home trophies. I was still ignored at school, but I spent my lunch hours in the speech and debate teacher's classroom with all of the other speechies. I had people to talk to, friends, my first real kiss, my first boyfriend. All of that came out of speech and debate. I still wasn't cool, even in this subsection of nerd, because I was going to tournaments to compete, not because we got to stay at a hotel with minimal parental supervision, and I wasn't the one sneaking in wine coolers or making out in the corners. One of the other kids on the team actually said to me, "Why did you sign up for that tournament? You know, it's local. You don't get to stay in a hotel." I wasn't noteworthy in my high school, but I started to get a name for myself at the other high schools. I would overhear other people being afraid because they were about to go up against me. If I did something unconventional, like wearing my fuzzy blue slippers between competitive rounds instead of my heels, there might have been a snide comment or two, but at the next tournament, 10 more kids would be wearing slippers. When we graduated from high school, we were sitting in the auditorium and we all look at our diplomas. Everybody around me wanted to know mine was different. Mine had seals on it, provided by the National Forensic League, the organization that oversaw competitive public speaking and debate in high school, and it was a testament to what I had accomplished over the last few years. A few years after high school, I was at a bar with some friends from college. I had friends. We were having a great time, and we're laughing, and we're having a wonderful time. And this young woman comes up to me, "Liz, Saratoga High?" Yeah? "It's me, Jenny," an E name. And she starts telling me about her life. And it was obvious to me and to my friends that she was looking for my approval. This was one of those popular girls, one of those girls I emulated. I wanted to be so badly. I had no idea who she was. None. So it turned out, after the dust settled on our high school career, I had more impact on her than she had on me. I'm still not popular. I'm still not cool. I don't get invited to a lot of parties. In fact, I will be the only member of a team that doesn't get invited. Most people I have fooled that I'm an extrovert because I'm involved in a lot of things. But the truth is that I keep myself ridiculously busy. so that I don't feel like that lonely little girl sitting home on Saturday night. But between you and me, if I'm not working on a project, I'm still curled up in my favorite chair reading a book.
You're right, you are short. Oh my God. Thank you, Liz. In case you haven't figured out, Liz and I worked together here at the Elks for, I don't know, 5, 6 years almost, before I left and she took over my position as a marketing and program manager here. She does keep herself ridiculously busy, but she is involved in so much around town that in the arts that you can't help but just say, wow. You know, it's just amazing, the abilities and the talents that she has. She spends time at, well, unfortunately, PCA is now no longer there, but she would be performing in PCA, plays at PCA regularly. She's the founder and president of the Prescott Improv Collection, which is a group of improv actors that perform around town and even here. They're actually pretty funny people. She has also created and developed the Prescott Mystery Company, which has, what do they do? Murder mysteries, dinners, and those happen here, quarterly, and they always sell out. There's usually 2 shows, and and they're a lot of fun. Next one coming up in October has been sold out for almost 3 months, and it's going to be a lot of fun, costume kind of thing. So, one of the more interesting things about Liz, as we work together, is she said that when I asked her what was her most annoying habit, and she said, correcting other people's grammar. And I can vouch for her on that one. She's an annoying pain in it. Yeah. Between her and the chairman of the board of directors at this joint, I couldn't get 2 words written without it being corrected, because the chairman of the board of directors used to be an English teacher, and I'd send her an email and it would come back with red marks on it. Anyways, correcting grammar. Anyways, I asked everybody kind of a series of odd questions just to kind of get a sense of who they were and what they said. And I asked Liz, what was the most unusual thing she'd ever eaten? And she told me she went to a Japanese wedding, one Chinese? Oh, that screws the whole thing up. Okay, Chinese wedding. And she had grilled jellyfish. Yeah, that was kind of my reaction too, kind of like, and her comment was she wondered how they kept it from sliding through the grates. Just kind of form a mental image there of, kind of thing. Anyways, Liz Rogers. So our next speaker is also, we met her at AZ Wordsmith, which is our sister group, and once a month, next one coming up on the 9th will be across the hall, and that is our prose night. So it's fiction, nonfiction. Anybody that likes to write stories can come and tell a part of their story to whoever they want to. And she showed up one day and just has been telling this wonderful story over there for the last 3 or 4 months. And she's coming to the conclusion, I understand. And you got to kind of, but if you want to hear the end of the story or other stories, the 9th of October, we'll be over there, and a lot of fun. But anyways, our next storyteller, Amy Hutchisson.
I have been a mother for almost 2 decades, and that makes me feel really old. But the other day, as I say, several months ago now, a friend of mine announced her pregnancy. And after all of the, congratulations, she came to me and she said, you know, you and I, we both grew up in these really strict religious households. And I don't want to raise my kids like that. And I've seen you with your kids, and that's not how you raise your kids. So I was wondering, can you tell me your secret? And I said, I'd love to, if I knew what it was. And I said, let me get back to you on that, because, you know, I hadn't condensed my 20 years into a 30-second elevator pitch. So I thought about that and started to think of some of the defining moments in my life. And one thing that you need to know, a couple things you need to know. I was married to my husband for 15 years before he died, and we have 3 kids together. And he was gay. Coming from this strict religious environment, they taught us that you could pray the gay away. And just, you know, go ahead and marry a woman and, you know, God will heal you. That didn't work, in case anybody was wondering. But as my kids were starting to, you know, move on after my husband died, as I was starting to move on after my husband died, I was really interested in this intersection of, you know, what it's like to be gay and being in the church. And I really wanted to just get to know a little bit more about what that was like. So I read a bunch of books, and I watched a bunch of videos, and I listened to podcast episodes. And there's one video in particular that I watched frequently. And my oldest, who was 15 at the time, came to my room and said, Mom, why are you watching that? Are you a lesbian? And I had to laugh because, I mean, it was so close, but also off the mark. And I said, no, I'm not a lesbian. Oh, okay, because really when you're 15, you don't care that much about what your parents do. And I realized it was time to tell my kids that my husband had been gay, because that was something that he kept very close to the vest, and at least my 15-year-old. So we went for a drive, because when you have something that's important and scary to sell someone, if you drive, you don't have to look them in the face. So I was like, all right, let's start with the video. And I was like, hey, you know, remember that video that you asked me about the other day? And you asked if I was a lesbian, and I said I was not. And at this point, it was very important to me to let my child know I hadn't been lying to them. And so I said, and that's true, I'm not a lesbian. And I opened my mouth, just ready to say, but your dad was gay. And next to me, my child says, I am. Well, actually, I'm half a lesbian. I'm bi. And this is not how I expected this conversation to go. So as I'm picking my wits up off the dashboard, I realize I've been watching all these videos. One of them was called What to Do When Your Child Comes Out. And I'm like, wait, I know this one. And I said, thank you for telling me, and I love you. And is there anything else that you want to tell me about this right now? No, not really. Okay. Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because actually, you know what? Your dad was gay. And that brought up a lot of questions. Like, why on earth did you marry him? Did you not know? Well, why did you stay together? Why didn't you get divorced? And that was about a 45-minute conversation that followed, because honestly, there's a lot of nuance to it. And it's hard to explain to somebody who didn't grow up in this really restrictive, strict religious environment that teaches you things that aren't true. And as I was thinking about that, I realized there might be something here. Because a couple weeks after that drive, I got a text message. And it was my oldest. Hey, Mom, are you transphobic? No. Why? Oh, I was just curious. Okay. What would you say if I came out as trans? Probably the same thing that I said when you came out as bi, that I love you and I'm glad you told me. Oh, okay. Looking at my phone, and those 3 little dots pop up, and then they go away. And then they pop up again, and they go, and then they pop up again. I'm starting to think that I might know what's coming next. So the message comes through. Mom, I'm trans. Please use this name and, these pronouns for me. And so I type back, thank you for telling me, I love you. And honestly, I was a little bit confused because when I was growing up, trans wasn't a thing. I mean, obviously it was a thing. There were trans people, but nobody talked about it, at least not in the circles that I ran in. We barely talked about people who were gay. And I was wondering, how is this different? Because I was a tomboy growing up. I liked to wear pants and climb trees and play with bugs. And I was frankly really annoyed that I had to go to Girl Scouts where they taught us how to sew cushions and dip candles. And I couldn't go to Boy Scouts where they taught us to tie knots and set things on fire. And I tried to ask my oldest, I said, what is this like for you? Can you explain it? And they really didn't have the words to give me. But I wanted to really get it. And so as I thought some more, I realized I spent a lot of time not wanting to be a girl. I'm in my 40s now, and I still have moments where I don't really want to be a woman. Because frankly, our society does not treat women very well. And it occurred to me, after I'd really just kind of let this settle in my mind for a while, that I didn't want to be a girl. I didn't want to be a woman, but I never thought I wasn't one. I never thought I was something else. And about that time, as I was remembering all of this, I got back in touch with my friend Addie, and I said, I think I get it. I think I know. And it's not like this is the perfect answer that all of a sudden everybody will understand and everybody will just be able to be the best parent ever. Because it doesn't work that way. I knew how to be the best parent ever, actually, before I had kids. But I said, right from the start when I had children, I learned that I had to hold my expectations loosely. Because somehow in between them being inside and coming out, it was like a whole different kid. And there was something to that, whether the coming out was the birth or the coming out was out of the closet. This is the same kid, but I'm seeing them completely differently. And I said, your parents and my parents, they loved us. There was no question about that. They did the best that they knew how. But they had this idea that there was a certain mold that we were supposed to fit. And they did their best to raise us growing up into that mold. And I said, the thing that I have learned is that when you have your kids, you love them. We all love our kids. Almost everybody in the world loves their kids. And it's a little bit more than that, because it's not just loving our kids. It's accepting our kids as who they really are and not just who we want them to be. And it's honoring our kids' self-knowledge of the places inside of themselves that we can't see. And I said, that's what's important. You need to love your kids. And you need to accept your kids, and you need to honor your kids, even when you don't understand them, perhaps even especially when you don't understand them.
Thank you, Amy. Wow. Amy is recently transplanted. She's been here just a few years with her 3 children. And I don't remember, where did you move from?
We moved here from
Wisconsin,
Wisconsin.
yes. So I don't even know where that is. It's over there somewhere, northeast, I think, yeah. But anyways, so anyway, she came here with her 3 kids, and she's a very interesting person, really. Listening to her tell her stories, and we've sat and chatted for a while about stuff, and she homeschools her kids, which is, I don't have any kids, so I can't explain that to you. And somebody that homeschools their kids is, okay, well, that's a whole nother world, because I went to public schools my entire life. So I asked her, what was that like? And she says, well, it's challenging. It's sometimes hard to be mom and teacher at the same time, because the feedback you get is different. And one of the more interesting things is that how she handles a parent-teacher conference. Yeah. Which is, so I'm still not sure I understand how that works, whether there's a mirror involved or something, but yeah, it happens. One of the things she mentioned to me was that I asked her what she does in her spare time, other than homeschooling her kids and writing plans and all the things that go along with children, and then writing her stories and all of that. She crochets, and she crochets all different stuff. Blankets and whatever. What do you call it? Amigurumi. Amigurumi. Okay, which is Japanese, and it translates literally to stuffed animal. And so she crochets little stuffed animals. And right now you're doing what did you say, a dog?
I just finished
Eeyore. Just finished one like Eeyore. And so it's very fascinating kind of stuff that she does. So anyways, she likes movies, particularly kids' movies. And, when I asked her what should be the holiday that isn't one, she said her birthday. and she wanted to let you know it's in November, and that she is currently registered at Target. And if you need the spelling of her name, I can help you out with that. So thank you, Amy. Lee Reeves, everybody.
Who in this room ever attended kindergarten? Hands show. Yeah, almost everybody. Who ever put a kid in kindergarten? Okay, I know a few hands didn't go up, but everybody in this room has been 5, I'm sure. So let's go back to those days. Remember the construction paper, the color raspberries and green and gold, and the little scissors that could barely cut them with the round tips, and the tub of paste that turned to cement the minute you opened it? Well, for most people, those days are happy memories, fond memories. Either that, or they just, when I ask them, they can't remember a thing about kindergarten. Well, in my case, neither of those are true. I hated kindergarten, and I remember it well. You see, I hated it so badly that I developed a serious case of insomnia. So bad that my mother called the doctor, and that time what they did was order barbiturates. So they worked, but I couldn't get up in the morning to go to kindergarten, and that was fine with me. So then she decided to put me in the afternoon program, which didn't solve my problem, because the reason I hated kindergarten was I had the meanest teacher I would ever have in all of my school years. which seems so weird for a kindergarten teacher, right? She had these beady eyes, and she'd look at you like she knew there was nothing good behind your little kindergarten face. And she was really white, and she painted pink little, the rouge thing, kind of clownish, but there was nothing funny about her. And she was the first bully that I ever met. She really didn't like kids, and there was one kid in the class she really didn't like. He was, he couldn't sit still, and he had a little bit of a speech impediment, and he annoyed her, and he was often put off in the corner, and as another kid, you feel this. You feel this discomfort when you know the teacher clearly does not like this kid. So much so that when we had art projects, she'd let us walk around the room and comment on each other's projects. And I don't know who started it, but everybody would go to his and actually make fun of him and, point to them, and it was awful. And she didn't do anything about it. Now, I'd like to say I was this maverick of a child that stood up to Miss, we'll call her Crabapple, and told her exactly what I thought. But I slunk around past that boy, and I hope I didn't say the worst things. And that stays with you. You remember when people make you feel good and when they make you feel bad. And you really remember forever those times you make someone else feel bad. So that was already at kindergarten age, I was feeling that. So come time to put my own child, 30 years later, into kindergarten, I'm pretty apprehensive. But she is not. She cannot wait to go to kindergarten. She had a lot of medical problems and had been in the hospital many times, and all of her friends she would lose because she was often in a long time, and they would come and go. And her most important thing to her was making friends. And in kindergarten, she would be able to make friends that didn't go away and healthy friends. So she was very much looking forward to it. First couple days are fine, and then she comes home and says how lonely she is at school, because when she's on the playground, nobody wants to play with her. And she said, I just walk around and sing hum-dee-dee-dum. But she really wanted a friend. And I know that one of the reasons that she was having a hard time fitting in with the kids, because all the time in the hospitals, she'd had a lot of IVs. And survival with an IV means learning to keep your body very still and protect yourself when you move. And she protected herself. And she did not want to play jump rope or tag or any of that kind of stuff. So I went up to the teacher and thought I'd have a nice conversation about how we might help Lita acclimate and maybe make at least one friend. Well, this teacher was quite a bit different than mine. Her first name was Angie, and the kids called her by her first name. You might think that was a good sign, but it really wasn't. So when I talked to Angie about maybe we could work together, Lita's having a hard time adapting, and she's been in the hospital a lot, and she really wants to make a friend. And I'm kind of worried because the whole time I'm talking, Angie's like this. And when I finish, she says, Mrs. Reeves, it's a tough world out there. Your daughter does not need coddling. What she needs is some street smarts. And I looked at her like, okay, this is a joke. And when I realized it wasn't, I grabbed her by the lapel and said, listen, bitch. This is my kid, and she suffered more than you ever have, and she's tougher than you'll ever be. Well, no, I said that in here. Instead, I just thought to myself, we're getting out of here. I don't want my kid spending her whole day with this woman. Fortunately, we were moving, and we have to go to another kindergarten. But this time, the curse was over. Miss Schuler, she had sparkly blue eyes and a voice that was just so soft and lovely that you could curl up inside it. And when she talked to the kids, she got down like this, eyeball to eyeball, And she sparkled and was full of enthusiasm. And she loved my child. I got great, wonderful reports. It's a pleasure to have your daughter in school. She's so bright. She's reading at a 3rd grade level, and she's enthusiastic, and she's kind. And I'm feeling really, really good. You know how parents have these egos, and it felt great. And so come the end of the year, I get a call. She says she'd like me to come up to school and have a private conference. And I'm feeling very good about what I'm going to hear, because she starts right out as I expect. It's a pleasure having your child in class, and she's so bright and loves to, and it gets along with the other kids. However, the reason I've called you here is I want to keep her back a year. I think she should do kindergarten again. Well, the first thought that came to my mind is my brother, Billy. He was held back in 1st grade. And the psychologist at the time told my mother the best thing to do would be not to tell him in advance, because that would be upsetting. So he tells the story of sitting around thinking he's in 2nd grade, looking for a familiar face and not seeing one, and saying to himself, I flunked, I'm a loser. And that stayed with him. That's a scar that's still with him. So that's all I could think about, and I told Miss Schuler, and she said, don't worry, it's not going to be that way. It won't be that way. And I said, but you said she was one of your brightest kids. I don't get why you want to keep her back. And she said, well, that's exactly why I want to keep her back, which sounded very counterintuitive. She said, sometimes the brighter kids, if they're not physically at the level they should be, and if they're too sensitive and maybe emotionally not ready for school, she said they're going to have a hard time. Trust me, if she stays in kindergarten another year, she's going to have a better entire school experience. Well, I went home. I told her I'd think about it, talked to my husband, and I'm still from that missing a grade. It's flunked. Maybe it isn't as bad now, but it was really a stigma. On the other hand, I knew this woman really cared about my daughter. And I knew that she probably knew best, so I called her and said, okay, Lita can stay. I'll let her do a 2nd year in kindergarten. And 3 days later, my daughter comes running, just barreling through the door. Guess what? I get to stay in kindergarten another year. So it actually turned out to be one of the best decisions I made, because she had 15 years to live at that time, and her school was difficult as it was. She was in the hospital a lot. She was small for her age, even when she was the oldest in the class. And because of Miss Schuler, I think she was way more able to deal with the difficulties that came her way. And sometimes parents don't know best. And sometimes what seems counterintuitive is absolutely the best thing. Thank you.
Kind of interesting, 2 stories about kind of the opposite sides of that same story. One with Liz, who got moved ahead and struggled, and then one where the child was held back. Now, certainly there was an age difference and things like that, but at some point you got to wonder, what the right decision to be made at some point or another. Interesting that they worked out that way. Anyways, Lee has been living in town for about 15 years. She moved here with her husband and kids. Currently her son Skylar and her grandkids are around. But she hated it when she came here. I mean, hated it, and because she had a life, she's coming from Michigan, where She had a job as the head of a chamber of commerce. She was known by everybody. She had a wide circle of friends that, everybody knew her. She could go to the restaurants. People would go, "Oh, hi, Lee, how you doing? Good to see you again." Like she was somebody. Comes to Prescott, and she's nobody. She didn't have any friends. She didn't know anybody. And she was miserable. So what'd she do? She got new friends. And I like to tease her once in a while and tell her that she's never met a friend that she didn't keep. Because she knows everybody now. And she's not a member of the Chamber of Commerce, but you go somewhere and there's always people you're running into that know her, that work with her, that dance with her, that are in a program with her. It's like, damn. And life is good now. So, yeah, it's pleasant. So when I asked her what was the strangest thing she ever ate, it was good. She said it was a slice of American cheese wrapped in plastic. And for those of us that, we're all older in this crowd, and you think back to it and you say, God, what was that stuff, Just amazing. So anyways. And when I asked her what her most annoying habit was, she said she interrupts people too much. Okay, we'll let that slide. Because it's like, wow. Okay. Anyways, okay. So the holiday that she wants to become a national holiday is Dias de Muerto. Is that how you say it? Is that Dias de Muertos? Day of the Dead? Day of the Dead. Dias de Muertos. Yeah. That should be a national holiday. And I'd have to agree with that one. So anyways, Lee Reeves, thank you. So I have in my, as Johnny Carson would say, my formerly nicotine-stained fingers, quite a collection of wild card people offering to do the thing. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to lay them down on a table and let one of you choose the first wild card, and we'll do two. So who wants to pick the wild card? I might pick mine. So remember, we have no idea what's going to be said here. So
my name is Dave Ganci. It's spelled Ganci. And to some of you, that might sound Italian. And I have been asked if that's an Italian name. And my answer was, no, it's Sicilian. And this is true. And my grandfather, my father's father, was from Sicily. And that's why I use my hands, and I don't like a microphone. I inherited some of that. But my father's father died before he was born, so he never got the language, which I didn't either. And was born back east. When I started growing up, I wanted to find out a little bit of my heritage, and I looked in phone books for my name, Ganci. I couldn't find it. It wasn't until actually I came out west and got on the internet, and I found a bunch of them. I haven't contacted any of them yet, but when I say my name and I'm Sicilian, the person says, well, you don't look Sicilian. You don't look like Robert De Niro, which I did, but blonde hair, blue eyes, and, who was your father's mother? Where did she come from? Ireland. So you can use your imagination with Irish and Italian at the supper table, how that family must have gone. Anyway, well, the stereotypes. Typical Sicilian is probably Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, Marlon Brando in disguise. But Sicilians consider themselves basically a different breed of, I don't know, Italian, I suppose you could say it that way. But if you want to know or get a feel for what Sicilian family is like, all you have to do is watch Goodfellas movie and see the dinner table discussion, which starts off like a discussion, but ends up in a shouting match, which is what us Sicilians like to do. And some people look at that and think that it's an angry thing, that people are shouting at each other and they're mad. And it's not so. It's just a characteristic, like I'm doing like this. It's in your blood that you shout. Hey, Louis, shut up, Jim. You don't know what you're talking about, you know? And you see it in movies, and it's not an angry thing. It's just kind of whatever you want to call it. It's in, I think, Sicilian or maybe Italian blood and other, Latin bloods too. And one time I went to a Sicilian dinner. This was when I was a kid. And I remember the first one I went to where they kept bringing out food. And I was a young kid, and I had a pretty good appetite, but they kept bringing out one thing after another. And I would eat till I couldn't eat it anymore, and the dinner lasted a couple hours, There's lots of wine bottles to empty, this kind of thing. So I had to go and lay down a couple times, but I wanted to be still part of the crowd. And they'd come around and, Dave, get up. Come on, you got some more to eat, like Sicilians will do. But I had to keep eating, and I actually got sick doing this, but I realized they do this like for every dinner. Dinner and eating became a celebration, not just hurry up, no such thing as fast food. And that was part of their whole celebration of family and life was around food. And I look at that today and say, where is that today, unless you go to dinner at a restaurant? Where is that? Did it become something more than just eating to live? It's a whole social family thing and it gets into shouting matches, And I would listen to these and I'd start laughing, So I guess if there's a moral to this short story, it's how is it possible to make that happen again? Make the family get together over food, an event, rather than something to survive. And now you say, well, we might all be obese if that happened. But I never saw really obese Sicilians. Perhaps because they were running from the police. I don't know. She's kidding. But that's funny because of the stigma. I don't want to say stigma, but the idea that Sicilians, Sicilians and the mafia our brothers. There's a story in that. I don't have time to tell you, but thank you for the invitation.
Well, thank you for dropping your names in the hat. I appreciate them. This is the chosen one here. If you want to tell a story at a future one, well, we can hold on to these, or you can just come and fill out a new one and see how it goes. So the second person to tell a short 5-minute story in the wild card is Joelle Dunavan.
I was a drama major at Baylor University, and I don't want anybody going away from this story saying, oh, what, she said bad things about Baylor. Actually, they had a wonderful theater department, which was why I went there. But I kept getting called into the Dean of Women's office for smoking, which was not allowed for women on the Baylor campus. And right across the street from the theater was James Cafe, where you could get a cup of coffee and some pancakes for about $1. So we could all, the drama majors could all afford to go to James Cafe. And smoking, that was where I did my smoking. I would never have dreamed of smoking in the dorm because there were literally spies, not for upperclassmen, but for freshman women that were supposed to be kept kind of hands off, I guess. Well, anyway, so I went to see the dean of freshman women, and fortunately, she liked me, and we got along, and she said on my first 2 offenses, now, if you're called in a 3rd time, you'll have to go to Joyce Packard's office, the dean of women, and you will not like that experience, so do not smoke anymore. And it got to be May. It was almost time for school to be out. And guess what? I got my 3rd summons. So up I go to Gladys Packard's office, and she said, sit down, Miss Harris. And I sat down, and she said, Miss Harris, this is your 3rd offense. What do you have to say for yourself? And I sort of pulled myself together and sat up straight, and I said, I guess I just don't understand it. If it's a sin, if it's wrong to smoke, then how come men get to smoke on this campus? Don't say another word. I know you're nothing but a streetwalker. Streetwalker? I mean, I remember thinking, well, don't say another word. Does that mean whore or prostitute? I mean, I was horrified. Sweet little innocent me. And anyway, I didn't say another word. And I did leave honorably. I was not expelled, but I decided I would go to the University of Texas the next year and not have to worry about having a sterling reputation, which I think I had. But anyway, I did go to the university the next year, but guess what? They had a great school. The University of Texas I loved, but I really missed the drama department in the years that I was there. It was an incredible department with a fabulous director, and so I did go back. And it's a good thing I went back because I also met my husband when I went back. So we all lived happily ever after, even me.
Wildcards can be a lot of fun. There's been 1 or 2 that have just gone, ooh. No, anyways, but those are the minority. Most of the time, a lot of fun. Thanks again for everybody who put their name in the hat, and I appreciate you giving it a whirl. Okay, back to the regular program, and our next storyteller is another locally famous individual, I'll say. What? Oh, okay. Well, he's okay. Well, he's not locally famous to himself, but he is to me. Okay. So, John Duncan.
it was an interesting experience being able to be up here. I just walked in the door and they said, you have to say something. And so this is what I said. I didn't know it was an audition, but I ended up doing it. So, and so today's a tough day, so I really hope I'm capable of remembering everything and being able to say what I need to say. So, a lot of people go through midlife crisis and they end up getting, a new face, a new car, and all of these other things. I'm sorry? Oh, I thought something. Okay. Anyways, and they end up, reinventing themselves and when I was 38, when on my birthday, when I turned 38, I went through an experience of going back to thinking of when, I was really nervous that day. There was a lot of nervous tension, and I really didn't know exactly why 38, why that year was a big deal for me. And then going through and thinking why, and it was just really rediscovering of when I lost my innocence as a kid. I was 8 or 9 years old, and I was on the playground and experiencing elementary school and going and trying to make friends and everything like that. And there was a day in which I ended up being bullied rather harshly, and it was the first time that I was, called a faggot, and being taught as the other by my schoolmates, a schoolmate, and that day, because I was a school bus kid. So I went on the school bus, and the school bus stop was pretty far, and so I was alone and walking home, and it was a long walk. And we had a swing set, and I felt so other after that day of school that, and I was always a flamboyant kid. I was always different. So I didn't know what those terms were. I had no acknowledgement of how I was different. But I knew that I was less than that day. And I went to the playground next to my house and took a rope and put it around my neck, and luckily I wasn't a Boy Scout, so I didn't know really how to tie a knot. But it was I jumped off the swing set and trying to hang myself. And at a point in your life, you think of when you were a kid and really understanding the things that you go through, and so when I jumped off, I ended up hitting my head, and I was on the in the sandbox, and I woke up, and I was like, I kind of was dazed, and I guess in shock, and I end up going back into the house, not really understanding, how much I would have lost at that day. And you walk through the house thinking, okay, no one will notice. No one will know. You were alone. It didn't work. You'll just continue on and do your thing. Not really recognizing that there was a huge rope burn that was around my neck. And my mom, the look of shock on her face of going, what did you do to yourself? And at the time, it was in the 80s, so everybody was like video games and the fault of, media and all of these other things that were built up, and I wanted to hide the real reason why I tried to do it, because I was different and I didn't want anybody to know that I was different and that I was being pointed out as other, because I didn't know what it was. And so I was, in a way, schooled that day. My parents immediately put me into therapy. I was in therapy for 10 years. And I learned how to have the mafia of protection laws. Never sit with the window behind you. Always look and know every single exit that you know, and always make sure that everybody in the room, you know who they are, or you know a roundabout of who they are to protect yourself. And I went through that, not knowing that those were the rules of the mafia, but you go through life and you protect yourself and you make sure that even though you may be putting yourself into an unsafe situation, you are safe, because you know the exits and you know how to get out of any type of situation that you can. And I go through life and, do everything that I wanted to do, and worked for, Disney, and spent a lot more time with my parents and my dad and my family, and got to, be around while my nieces and nephews are being brought into this world, and even you end up going through bad things and good things in your life, and here I am at 38, 30 years ago, where I could have not been there for all of the things and all of what I had done in my life. Because you don't realize what you would have missed, or what would I have missed if I had succeeded that day. To not be there. Existence is a gift, and it needs to be cherished. I didn't have this experience when I first auditioned, but I went to my friend's memorial today that I went to high school with. And we made a pact on the courthouse lawn to change the world and make it better for people like us, for queer kids like us. To give us safe spaces to be ourselves. And she gave up. And it's more important to me to know that experience today, because she won't be there for her kids, and she won't be there to see them grow up. And know that it's worth it. That it's all worth it. Thank you.
When I grow up, I want to be like that man. A very, very straight version of that man, but like that guy. Anyway, John Duncan. Wow. September is National Suicide Prevention Month, so it's coming to a close. And there was a walk in the park yesterday that a whole bunch of people attended. And I've known, God, since I moved to this town, 4 people, either as somebody I knew, somebody's daughter, a musician friend, acquaintance, that have taken their own life. And I'm shocked at that, because 65, 66 years I've been on this planet, and I didn't know anybody. And I'm just kind of amazed at that. But John gave back. He's and the thing, and besides his real job, he's the owner and executive producer of 4 AM Productions here in Prescott, Arizona. One of the things he does. He is also the owner and publisher of the 5 Senses magazine, and if you've ever seen that. He is a native Prescottian, so he's the rare one. So, how many of those are there in the crowd? Well, there you are then. Okay. He was inspired to become an advocate for the LGBTQ community from the death of Matthew Shepard, if anybody remembers him and what happened to him many, many years ago now. It was. This 97, I think you mentioned? 97, yeah. He is an advocate for that group, a very vocal one. He is also, his real job is for Northland Cares, which, if you're not familiar with Northland Cares, they are a group that supports HIV positive individuals in the community. They are a wonderful group. They will be holding a benefit here on October 12th. And there's posters and things like that in the elevator that you can look at, but it's a great opportunity to support a group that is pretty selfless. He is a grant writer and a fundraiser. He is also trained to recognize the warning signs of people that are in crisis, to help them get to the resources that are available to them. He has an annoying habit. Do you ever text somebody and the next thing you know, they're on the phone to you rather than responding to the text? That's this guy. You know? No, you're supposed to text me back. I didn't actually want to talk to you. That's his thing. His holiday would be Indigenous Peoples Day. Should be a national holiday. And the strangest thing he ever ate was fried soft-shelled crab. Has anybody ever had that before? Okay, so then for those of you who don't know, lots of people have had crab, and it's kind of like, it tastes like chicken. It's just crab meat, It's not a big deal. You eat it. But when you get a whole soft-shell crab, you get a whole soft-shell crab, soft shell and all, and they just kind of deep fry the sucker and put it on your plate, a couple of rolls and some sauce, and and you just chow down on it. It's a little off-putting in the beginning, but it is so freaking good. So good, so good. Thank you, John. Okay. I don't know, okay. Mike, I'm asking you about food. What is the worst thing you've ever eaten? The weirdest thing you've ever eaten?
It would be the weirdest and worst.
Okay.
When we toured with the Navy show band in South America, we toured for the State Department. And there were a lot of state dinners with presidents and all that kind of stuff. And we were told, no matter what it is, you eat it because we don't want them being upset with the United States. Do any of you remember Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom with the monkey heads? Remember that? We had a dinner with the president of Bolivia, and the most important delicacy in Bolivia is boiled rooster head. And they put it on what looks like a Coca-Cola in solid silver, like a Coca-Cola bottle, and it's staring at you. And you are supposed to lift it off, take your spoon. I did one bite.
Good for you. Yeah. Okay. I think that's the winner so far, no doubt about it. But okay. So, anyways, our final storyteller of the afternoon is Clay Hurtubise. Come on up, Clay.
Driving north on Route 1, I passed Boca Raton, Florida. I came across this beautiful cove, not real large, but with snow-white sand. Not a soul in sight. I pull my rental convertible over. I jump out. I notice I'm in front of a green curb. In Maine, we don't have green curbs. I figured, no big deal. So I go and I grab my blanket and towel. I snap the blanket open and lay it out, put the towel down as a headrest, and I lay back and go, just what the doctor ordered. And that's for real. That week, I had given bone marrow. And if any of you have given bone marrow, you know how exhausted you feel afterwards, how tired and run down. You can't get out of your own way. Well, my sister and I were very close growing up. And when she got sick, the doctor got the three brothers in a room and said, we're going to need bone marrow. Right here. My other brothers thought I was being arrogant, but I loved her dearly. We used to do everything together. Hiking, biking, catching frogs, pulling lint out of our belly buttons. Ew! Ew! Comparing it. And we could finish each other's sentences. We also went to school together. It was a Catholic school with a convent in front and the church beside it. There'd be certain days walking home, I'd be really withdrawn and quiet. She knew me inside and out. She knew not to ask questions. When I got home, I wouldn't even watch Gilligan's Island. I'd do my homework and go straight to bed. And my parents would say, "What's wrong with Chris?" And she always made up some good story. Oh, they had to play tag football today, and he's awful at it, and the boys all made fun of him. And they'd buy it. And so we were extremely close. So when it came time to donate bone marrow, the doctor said, "This is something unusual. We haven't seen this before. You and your sister are 2 years apart. You're like identical twins." He said, "We have never seen two adults separated by 2 years, and the woman having given birth, which changes her blood, have the exact bone marrow. And not only that, the biomarkers in the blood are the same. We don't have to give her anti-rejection drugs." So he goes, "May we please take bone marrow from both hips?" And I said, "Absolutely." He goes, "You're going to be a wreck." He goes, "Get out of Maine, go someplace warm, lay in the sun, and recuperate." And so that's what I was doing. Well, when I went to do it, my brother's wife, his third Deborah at the time, said, "Chris is doing that for attention." From whom? So I'm laying on my blanket, getting all the attention I can stand from the sun in Florida. And I decided, it's time to go in the water. I'm from Maine. Going into the ocean is an event in Maine. In the summer, it may hit 54. And there's a ton of seaweed wrapping around your legs. You can't see the ocean floor. And it typically just suddenly drops off. And 1 minute you're here, and the next minute you're underwater. Well, I start strolling out there, and I'm just amazed. This water is so clear. It was so flat, it was like a lake. I couldn't understand what's going on. This isn't an ocean. This is someone's swimming pool. And I keep walking out, and these little fishies are going around my legs, and I'm just entranced by them. And I'm walking and slowly getting deeper. And I hear something. And I turn around. And there's a lady across the street in the third floor balcony. "Park! Park! Park!" And I'm thinking, oh, God, the green curb. And I'm thinking, she must be the local neighborhood curb police. And they're going to have me towed or ticketed. And I didn't care. And I was so weak I couldn't run in there anyways. So I just stay where I am. And she starts to wave. So I wave back. And I think, wow, she's pretty friendly for somebody yelling "park" at me. And so then she waves a little bit stronger. So I wave stronger. Well, then she does both arms. Well, you get it, both arms. And so I wave both arms. And then she jumps up and down and waving. So I do the same thing. And then she goes, "Er." I'm like, okay, something wrong with this lady. This is that children's game that was in the Korean movie there, Red Light, Green Light, yes. And so she's playing red light, green light, and I don't really understand it from a block away. But the next thing she does is this. And I know better than to imitate her. So I look down just as 2 6 to 8 foot long black shiny sharks pass in front of me within reach. Their fins are piercing through the water. And I'm shocked. I want to scream. I want to run towards shore. But I know better than to make a sudden movement. Well, then I look up at her, and she's doing this, like a washing machine. I'm going, what does she mean? So I look around. In about a 24-foot circle, there's dozens of sharks. And they're all in pairs. And they're all swimming in a circle. And I'm inside that circle. And I'm terrified. I'm like, what do I do? And I'm looking up for guidance, and she's like, that. And I'm thinking, nobody can help me. So I wait for a little break in the action. And I move my left foot. This is where a quad cane comes in handy. I move my left foot forward just a little bit, and something brushes against it. Oh my God. I said, they're going to start biting me. And I look down, and it's just a stingray swimming out to deeper water. And I think, just a stingray. And I think that was a time the Australian guy who used to wrestle alligators and stuff, he had a TV show, Steve, was it? Had died from getting pierced in the heart by the tail of a stingray. And I'm scared that this thing may just make me bleed, and then the dinner bell will ring for the sharks. And so I'm more terrified than ever. And it was at that exact moment I learned sharks are not attracted to the smell of urine. When there's a little bit of a bigger break, I make my way through. And on the way, I keep looking at the ocean floor, and I have to navigate around 3 more stingrays. And I'm scared about the tails. And I make my way around. I get to the beach, and there are 2 washed up on shore. And I get to my blanket, I throw it over my shoulder, and I start going back to the car. And I hear this whistle. And because of my stroke, I can't do it. But if anybody can, it's that one with you. It's pretty loud. Oh, there we go. Louder, louder. Give it some gusto. There! So I hear that, and I look up, and there's my friend. And she's got her hands above her head clapping. And then she goes, bravo! Bravo! So I do what anybody would do. I take a bow. And I go, and she reaches out, and then and I pretend I get hit. And we just start laughing our asses off. And I get back in the car, and I go back to my buddy's house. And I said, you're not going to believe what happened. And when I start telling him about the sharks swimming pairs, at one point, I had 2 sharks in front of me and 2 sharks behind me. I could have touched both groups at the same time. And it was that intense. And he's laughing his butt off. He's crying. He's just coming down. I tell him about the stingray, and he's down on the floor. And he's like, oh my God, silly, don't you know? Never go in the ocean after a major storm. And I looked at him, I said, well, I do now. And thank you.
Thank you, Clay. I was unaware of that sharks aren't attracted to urine, so it's good to know now, in case I'm ever in an emergency. Clay's had quite an existence. He's climbed mountains, traveled the world, just so many different things. He's an inventor, a writer. He invented the first hook and loop closure first aid kit, which it's a mountain climbing thing so that it doesn't fall out, and if you need a Band-Aid, it's still there for you. And you'll have to ask him about this stuff because I don't have any idea what it is. He also Tyvek'd the first aid book that was made for hiking and was waterproofed so that it wouldn't fall apart while you were out there fording streams and things like that. That was his invention. he enjoys writing, and he is frequently over at AZ Wordsmith Open Prose Mic a night at on the other side on Wednesdays. And if you want to telling a story, he actually once, and this is for you, Dave. He actually once had a hit put out on him by the Mob in New Jersey. So maybe someone you know. I don't know. There you go. Okay, the most interesting thing that he's ever eaten was yak. And he said, and I asked him if it tastes like chicken. He said, no, it actually tastes like bad beef. So if you just nasty stuff. He thinks, and I know a lot of us would agree with him, that November 4th, voting day, should be a national holiday. Yep, absolutely. An amazing man. 2 strokes, 1 traumatic brain injury, 2 traumatic brain injuries, 1 stroke, whatever. Yeah, who's counting? And he wanted me to let everybody know that this is his 3rd reinvention of himself that you are experiencing now. And to just not dwell on what is lost. So, thank you.